my sworn enemy has led troops to storm the capital, and even declared himself regent. One day, he came charging to the throne with murderous intent, ready to tear me limb from limb. I calmly dropped a thunderbolt on his head. I'm pregnant, and the child is yours. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Xiao Shuo is the ultimate villain, but I'm even more villainous than him. We've been at odds since we could remember. He mastered horseback archery at 3, forcing me to learn poetry and painting by 2. When he blossomed into a peerless jade-like young master, I promptly stole his white moonlight. Let me whisper a secret. I was born a delicate maiden, yet fate made me play the man's part. All say the Great Wei Empire was won jointly by the Yuan and Xiao families. The Yuans took the throne while the Xiaos became princes and marquises. The Xiaos always believed they too had a rightful claim to that throne. So my father found a pretext and neatly disposed of his father. Years later, he led troops into the capital and nearly as neatly disposed of me. Now he is a powerful minister holding sway over the court, while I am an unprecedented tyrant in history. He constantly schemes to seize the throne and usurp the state, while I ceaselessly plot to behead the minister and eliminate the traitor. In short, he wants me dead, and I want him dead too, yet just at this very moment, I find myself pregnant with his child. To speak of this matter, we must trace back to the day he stormed the capital. With an army of 200,000, he cut through all obstacles and pressed straight toward the imperial palace. Seeing the situation was beyond saving, surrender meant death, and resistance meant death, I sent out the one he had long yearned for, his white moonlight, my empress, Xie Yaohuan. I set a honey trap, delivering a pot of Longjing tea picked before the rains. Brewed by her own hands, of course. This was no ordinary tea, it was laced with poison. I hid in the shadows, waiting only for the poison to take effect, so I could personally sever his head and show those 200,000 rebels who truly rules this land. Yet, when I crept forward with my blade to claim his head, he suddenly lunged at me. How the poison turned into that kind of drug, I'll never know. In the end, I barely escaped, leaning against the wall for support. Perhaps my blade struck too viciously, or maybe the poison was too potent. Xiao Shuo's high fever raged for days and nights without subsiding. Seizing the opportunity, I spread rumors that he had defied ancestral teachings and was struck by divine retribution, which was why he fell gravely ill upon reaching the imperial capital. At the same time, I conjured ghostly apparitions disguised as the Xiao family ancestors to haunt the place, not forgetting to summon heavenly thunder to strike down their commander's banner. And just like that, with a few petty tricks, I threw his 200,000 strong army into disarray. I may not be a general's material when it comes to leading troops into battle. I'm no match for Xiao Shuo. But when it comes to scheming and manipulating minds, if I dare claim second place, no one would dare claim first. When the time was ripe, I invited an enlightened monk to perform rituals to dispel evil and appease the spirits. Coincidentally, it was at this very moment that Xiao Shuo's high fever broke, so I flung open the Chengtian gate, welcoming him into the palace with grand ceremony, playing the role of a wise ruler. First, I reasoned with him by righting the wrongs done to his family, then moved him with the shared blood and tears of our ancestors fighting side by side. Finally, I executed a few scapegoats, petty troublemakers, to silence the gossiping masses. Throughout the dynasties, whether emperors or court officials, all prioritized filial piety and righteousness. Before the Hall of Supreme Harmony, I shamelessly used underhanded tactics to place him on the moral high ground. Xiao Shuo gripped the dragon-slaying saber, tightening and loosening his hold repeatedly, until the alloy steel hilt was deformed by his grip. In the end, he still couldn't bring himself to press that saber against my neck. But then again, he wasn't someone to be trifled with either. They'll say I'm still too young to discern people's true intentions, allowing treacherous ministers to block my path, and that my actions are erratic, my nature reckless, likely to endanger the state and its people. In short, to put it simply, I could remain as emperor, but only with a capable minister to assist me, so he openly declared himself Prince Regent, ruling the court in my stead, becoming the first regent of the Great Wei dynasty. From then on, The regent of Great Wei, wielding the dragon-slaying blade, had the authority to execute foolish rulers above and treacherous ministers below, rightfully placing my little life at the tip of his blade. The entire court celebrated this for 3 days and 3 nights. I don't know whether they were relieved that the dynasty hadn't changed and their official positions were preserved, or celebrating that someone had finally emerged to threaten my imperial neck. There are always treacherous ministers trying to harm their emperor. From the very day I ascended the dragon throne, I understood this truth profoundly. The day before, I suddenly realized my monthly cycle was half a month late. So today I summoned the court physician Xiongzhu to the palace. Xiongzhu took the pulse and immediately changed his expression. "Your Majesty, you are with child." This was nothing short of a bolt from the blue. As a female emperor disguised as a man, I had taken in countless beauties from across the land to conceal my identity, playing the capricious and fickle ruler to keep the harem on edge. How could I possibly let anyone notice anything amiss with a bulging belly? I turned and had Xiongzhu bring me the saffron. Before the saffron water could finish brewing, news came of Xiao Shuo's palace search. Perhaps now that his position as regent was secure, he finally had time to deal with the instigator who'd brought down divine retribution upon him. Just as I lifted the medicinal brew to my lips, Xiao Shuo strode into my bedchamber, the dragon-slaying saber in hand. His hawk-like gaze swept over my medicine bowl as a cold smirk tugged at his lips. "If I didn't know His Majesty was a man, I'd almost suspect you were trying to destroy evidence before my palace search." Me, damn it, clearly, this was just his idea of a joke. When I was 3 years old and he was 7, he already said I looked like a little girl. We've never gotten along, and he never missed a chance to comment on my feminine features for a man. This went against my father's scales, who was desperate for an heir, and naturally, it went against mine too. So when I stole his beloved, he got exactly what he deserved. Would the regent care for a bowl? There might be a pleasant surprise in store. Phut tilde. He was so furious he nearly spat tea all over my dragon face. At this critical juncture, there's no way I can drink this bowl of medicine. Whether I miscarry in front of him or he discovers the slightest clue, my life would surely be forfeited. He said that on the day he was assassinated in the military tent, he caught the scent of cold plum fragrance on the assassin. For a whole month, he searched all over the capital but couldn't find this particular incense until yesterday. When he happened upon it in the palace storeroom, the steward claimed it was distributed for use by the imperial concubines. The implication was clear. He suspected one of my concubines had attempted to assassinate him. He might as well have outright said I was the one behind it. He didn't mention that he had also dealt with that concubine, only using it to threaten me. He gave me 2 choices. Either let him search the palace, though he might not find anything. It would humiliate me beyond measure, grinding my imperial dignity into the dirt. How could I ever command respect from my ministers or concubines again? Or hand over that person to him. He generously gave me a day to think it over. No sooner had he left than my empress, Xie Yaohuan, arrived. My empress was dignified and magnanimous. Yet the moment she entered, she struck me with a bolt from the blue. That day, I was also in the command tent. She said that day, she saw it. She saw my true identity as a woman, she said. The person that night could only be her. Had it been anyone else, it would have meant certain death even for me. I was shocked, utterly shocked, but only for that fleeting moment. "So, it was you who drugged him." At last, I understood why my poison had turned into that vile concoction. It must have been Xie Yaohuan's added ingredients that neutralized my poison, otherwise, Xiao Shuo wouldn't have reacted that way. Fury rose in my heart, and wickedness surged through my veins. "You ruined my plans. And now you dare threaten me with it." "Xie Yaohuan, who gave you the nerve?" "Guards." 2 shadow guards appeared without a sound. "Dispose of the empress, make it clean." Xie Yaohuan's legs gave way in terror, and she collapsed to the ground. In the blink of an eye, she drew her final trump card, a bone flute. The bone flute's peculiar sound pierced the night sky above the Lijing Hall. In the darkness, several ghostly figures rushed toward them at lightning speed, immediately shielding Xie Yaohuan. Xie Yaohuan laughed. Her laughter, having narrowly escaped death, rang out loud and clear, filled with arrogance and, even more, with mockery toward me, the ruler of this nation. her triumphant gaze fell upon me, as if saying, "Your Majesty, can you still kill me now?" Indeed, I couldn't kill her because these shadow guards belonged to Xiao Shuo. In terms of brute force, damn it, I was truly no match for them, just a little more, and this woman would have been dead by my hand. What a pity, I must say. That fellow Xiao Shuo is truly a devoted lover. When the Xiao family faced peril, Xie Yaohuan threw herself into my arms without hesitation, yet he bears no grudge at all. The bone flute he gave her can still command his secret guards to this day. The bone flute had barely sounded when he came sweeping into the palace on the wind and waves. "Ashuo, His Majesty wants to silence me by killing me." Xie Yaohuan, trembling like a startled rabbit, threw herself into Xiao Shuo's arms. Xiao Shuo neither looked at her nor embraced her, but instead turned his gaze toward me. I gazed at her with indifference, watching her performance. "It was me in your tent that night. His Majesty said you'd only drink tea from me, and that I alone could deliver the fatal blow. I didn't want to, but I had to consider the lives of the entire Xie family." Xie Yaohuan wept pearly tears, effortlessly shifting the blame onto me. "Is it true?" Xiao Shuo asked me. I dismissed it casually. "You should have seen this coming." He was furious. "Yuan Zhao, how could you stoop so low as to threaten your own empress into such despicable acts?" I smiled at Xie Yaohuan. "Did you hear that, Empress? Despicable. Ha ha ha, Prince Regent, that's quite the assessment." Xie Yaohuan's face instantly turned pale, and she shrank further into Xiao Shuo's embrace. My indifferent demeanor completely enraged Xiao Shuo. "Yuan Zhao," I wiped the smile from my face. "Xiao Shuo, do you have some misunderstanding about me? Do you really think I enjoy wearing the cuckold's horns?" I casually handed the big iron pot back to Xie Yaohuan. Xiao Shuo was stunned, and Xie Yaohuan froze. "Shuo, don't believe her. You have to trust me. I would never intentionally hurt you." Leaning against the dragon throne, I watched Xie Yaohuan with great amusement. The same person who once shared a spring breeze with Xiao Shuo and later stabbed him. I wonder how Xie Yaohuan plans to spin this lie. Clearly, Xiao Shuo was utterly baffled too, ever thoughtful. I struck him with another thunderbolt. "Regent, you've had an affair with my empress. Tell me, how should I deal with you? If your subordinates were to find out that you waged war on the capital, draining the people's resources for a woman, and then swallowed your pride to cease hostilities for her sake, what would they think?" Xiao Shuo didn't answer. His expression was extremely complicated. After he left, I said to Xie Yaohuan, "Thank you, Empress, for giving me leverage against him. Defiling the imperial harem, I wonder if he can bear the weight of such a charge." Xie Yaohuan was both shocked and terrified. "Why you? Are you a devil?" The Empress jests. "How could the word devil possibly describe my brilliance and martial prowess?" Xie Yaohuan, "How could my empress be someone to be trampled upon?" That very day, she moved into the Luxian residence under the pretext of illness. The Luxian residence was a Buddhist hall. The foolish emperor of the previous dynasty had fallen for a married woman, unable to overstep due to their statuses. He had her renounce worldly ties by becoming a nun. This Luxian residence was built by him for her at that time. Xie Yaohuan's intention was crystal clear. She was determined to sever all ties with me, so she could rightfully rekindle her past with Xiao Shuo. She even handed over the authority to manage the imperial harem to her arch-rival, Yu Mairen. 3 years ago, she was a legendary figure, the most stunning beauty across the 9 provinces, the most favored in the imperial harem. I even went to great expense and effort to build her a Kanglan terrace by the Tay pool, where one could pluck stars and moon above and gather floral splendor below. She had no family backing, yet I doted on her to the heavens, making sure no one dared offend her. But in the end, I still neglected her. For one simple reason, she always sought to climb onto my imperial bed, given that Xie Yaohuan had long regarded her as a thorn in the flesh. How could I possibly entrust her with authority over the 6 palaces? Was it just to make it easier for her to climb onto my imperial bed, keeping me constantly on edge? I believe this is the truth. That very night, my Yu beauty brought soup to the Lijing Hall. I casually took a few sips and, as usual, lit some calming incense. Before long, she was fast asleep. Though fully aware of her intentions, I didn't send her away. Firstly, to establish her status as a favored consort, and secondly, because I needed her to shield me from doubts about my certain capabilities. When I woke from a nightmare in the early hours, I found myself resting on her lap, her gentle fingers stroking my long hair, her bewitching eyes captivating my soul. Your Majesty, another nightmare. Ever since Xiao Shuo raised his army, I've been plagued by nightmares of being killed by him, pierced by his arrows in chaos, chopped into a human swine, torn apart by 5 horses. Every conceivable death played out in my dreams, but from the day I discovered my pregnancy, my nightmares became fixed. I dreamed I was fleeing barefoot through the wilderness, as if demons were chasing me, yet Xiao Shuo came straight at me, piercing my heart with his sword. He sneered at me with a sinister laugh. How dare you steal the seed of this prince? Supporting my dizzy head as I sat up, I asked, when did you wake up? Just now, Your Majesty. Are you attending the morning court today? May this humble consort assist you in changing clothes? I neither agreed nor disagreed. Only when she dressed me did I realize she seemed to be half a head taller than me now. My beloved consort, have you grown taller again? Consort, you smiled and said, all thanks to Your Majesty's excellent care. On the 5th day of Xie Yaohuan's stay at Luxian residence, Regent Xiao Shuo entered the palace for the first time, and it was on this very day that I encountered an assassination attempt. To be precise, it was Xiao Shuo who was targeted, right before my eyes, within the palace grounds. Over a dozen black-clad, masked figures suddenly appeared. At that moment, only the 2 of us were by the edge of the Tay Pond. Given the compromising circumstances, I immediately realized this was Xiao Shuo's scheme, a feigned injury to win sympathy. He couldn't publicly reveal that I had sent Xie Yaohuan to assassinate him, nor could he seek legitimate revenge against me, which is why he deliberately orchestrated this assassination attempt. So when the assassin thrust his sword towards Xiao Shuo's chest, I threw myself in front of him. I heard a sickening squelch as the blade pierced through my clothes, slid along my collarbone, and impaled my shoulder in one swift motion. Xiao Shuo caught me from behind and struck out with his palm, instantly shattering the black-clad assassin's heart meridian. The man dropped dead on the spot. Not a single living soul was left. By the time the Imperial Guards arrived, only a dozen corpses lay on the ground. Xiao Shuo clearly hadn't expected me to block that sword. Seeing the blood gushing from my wound, his face turned deathly pale. Why did you do this? Clutching my bleeding shoulder, I laughed at him. The Regent truly is ruthless, even willing to deal such a vicious blow to himself. His pale face instantly darkened. You're saying it was me, wasn't it? He glared at me, and I glared right back. Who doesn't know each other's true nature? Why pretend? Growing increasingly flustered, he covered my eyes and hoisted me over his shoulder. Summon the Imperial Physician. I corrected him from my perch on his shoulder. Summon Xiangzhu. For once, he didn't argue with me, merely sneering that even my lust should have limits. He refused to believe a young, inexperienced physician like Xiangzhu could possess any real medical skill. Assuming this was just another of my perverse whims, arriving at Lijing Hall, Xiangzhu had already brought the medicine chest. Regent Prince, I order you to step back, I commanded. Xiao Shuo crossed his arms, standing firm as Mount Tai. I must see His Majesty's injury with my own eyes. Who knows if it's real or fake, or if someone's trying to frame me. I'm furious, I swear. If I get the chance, I'll tear that bastard to pieces. Nothing less will quell the hatred in my heart. Xiangzhu, cut open his clothes and show him. The clothes were carefully cut open layer by layer, revealing the wound beneath. Xiao Shuo gasped sharply, his previous imposing demeanor completely gone. He raised his hand as if to do something, but I stopped him. Your Highness the Regent, have you seen clearly whether this is real or fake? I directly thrust my finger into the sword hole, sinking half my finger inside. Cold sweat from the pain trickled down my hairline as I stared at him stubbornly and furiously. Xiao Shuo's face darkened once more. He wanted to say something but ultimately couldn't bring himself to speak. In the end, he turned away angrily and stormed off with a flick of his sleeve. I withdrew my fingers, trembling from the pain, and collapsed weakly onto the couch, utterly drained of strength to move. Xiao Shuo didn't enter the palace for 3 days. Lady Yu, however, sent me blood-nourishing and wound-healing tonics every day, always gazing at me with knitted brows. Your Majesty hates him, doesn't she? Why would you risk your life to save him? These power struggles weren't something I cared to explain to her. I simply said, you wouldn't understand. Meiren's mood seemed to have darkened as well. How could Xie Yaohuan not come to make an appearance over such a major incident? She stood before me in plain yet exquisitely refined attire, her graceful figure poised as she stared at my wounded shoulder and voiced her ultimate fantasy. Does your Majesty intend to perform a self-injury ruse before him? He bears you an irreconcilable enmity. Do you believe this sword wound could possibly atone for it? Those assassins were sent by your Majesty, weren't they? Do you think he wouldn't see through such a cheap trick? Xie Yaohuan's current demeanor reminded me of how she had treated Meiren when the latter first entered the palace. This was clearly her thinking I meant to compete for favor with her. I was so angry at her I could only laugh. After all this time reciting scriptures in the Buddhist hall, how has the Empress's mind grown even more foul? Her face flushed crimson with rage. A few days later, Xie Yaohuan invited me to Tai Pond. I had just arrived when she suddenly plunged into the water. She emerged from the water, throwing me a cold, disdainful smile. I raised an eyebrow. Could it be she was trying to frame me for pushing her in? Sure enough. The woman buried her head in the water and began flailing wildly. Help! Help me! My gaze swept across the room and landed on the other end. Xiao Shuo approaching leisurely, accompanied by those political opportunists from the Council of State, amid Xie Yaohuan's enthusiastic shouts. They all turned to look in my direction. My eyes unexpectedly met Xiao Shuo's across the distance. Others I might not fear, but wouldn't this bastard Xiao Shuo seize any leverage to destroy me completely? Last time he failed to finish me off, this time he'll surely not let me go. So I shouted loudly, "Fear not, my queen, your emperor comes to save you." With a splash, I leaped into the Tai pool. As the water enveloped me, my mind suddenly flashed back to when I was 5 years old, being tied up, heavy stones tied to my feet, and thrown into the Tai pool. An overwhelming terror seized me. Like a prisoner under a curse, I was powerless to struggle, only able to watch helplessly as the water swallowed me whole. The water rose over my head, and as the light of the sky faded away, I couldn't even manage to cry out. Just then, a dark figure descended from above, and in the next moment, a pair of strong arms lifted me out of the water. You're afraid of water, why did you jump in? I saw the light again and breathed in the air. I vaguely remember that year. It was also him who jumped into the water to save me, but because he touched my bare chest, I slapped him across the face. From then on, our relationship grew increasingly hostile. I won't jump. What if your beloved white moonlight falsely accuses me of pushing her into the water? Xiao Shuo's face darkened, extremely dark. He pulled me ashore first before going back to rescue Xie Yaohuan. I knew perfectly well that with court officials present, he dared not save me last. Whether I feared water or could swim was irrelevant, I wasn't going to die. When Xie Yaohuan was finally fished out, she was grinding her teeth in fury. Just before Xiao Shuo could set her down, she dramatically fainted in his arms, her claws clinging desperately to his neck, impossible to pry loose. What a fine empress you are to me. Even at such a time, you don't forget to create opportunities for me to make things difficult for Xiao Shuo. How about this? Let the regent prince escort the empress back to Luxian residence on my behalf. Xiao Shuo's face darkened further, but in the end, he didn't tear Xie Yaohuan's arm off in front of everyone. The political opportunists in the council chamber were cunning as foxes, keeping their eyes downcast and pretending not to see a thing. I could only respond with a hollow laugh. Before I could even return to the Hall of Governance, news from Xiao Shuo arrived once more. The regent has decreed drain the Tai pool dry. So what if I just drowned your white moonlight? Is it really that big a deal? I nearly lost my life here 3 times. Did you hear me complain? Drain the Tai pool. Hearing Xiao Shuo's command, Xie Yaohuan finally opened her eyes. Shuo, was it you who saved me? Xiao Shuo didn't answer, only looked at her hands. Xie Yaohuan's pretty face flushed red, immediately releasing the 2 paws that had been clinging to Xiao Shuo's neck. Xiao Shuo set her down on the ground. Xie Yaohuan hugged her dripping wet body, utterly humiliated. You don't look. Xiao Shuo turned his back and asked, do you have something to say to me? Xie Yaohuan suddenly burst into tears. His Majesty wants to kill me. Ashore, I'm so scared. What should I do? It's not him. What? To kill you? He wouldn't need to resort to any tricks. Xie Yaohuan. A thunderbolt struck out of the blue, leaving Xie Yaohuan dazed for a long moment. Moreover, on the day of the palace coup, he might have poisoned me, but he would never have given me that kind of drug. Xie Yaohuan's face instantly turned deathly pale. Xiao Shuo had never tolerated the slightest impurity in his eyes. What exactly are you trying to do, Xie Yaohuan? You were the one who called off the engagement back then, and now you're acting like this. Before he could finish, Xie Yaohuan wrapped her arms around him from behind, as a legendary war god. Xiao Shuo had been trained since childhood to subdue attacks from behind. Though the one behind him now was no enemy, she was more terrifying than any foe, so this eternally clueless straight man immediately flipped the person behind him over his shoulder in a judo throw, then twisted their arm behind their back, pinning them firmly to the icy floor. Xie Yaohuan, pressed against the ground like a dead pig, Xie Yaohuan couldn't move a muscle. Never in her wildest dreams did she imagine that lowering herself to give Xiao Shuo this chance would result in such an outcome. Just as she was about to burst into curses, her clothes were suddenly pulled open. Feeling the man's scrutinizing gaze upon her, Xie Yaohuan's heart pounded wildly. Ashura, you're not. What? It wasn't you. That day in the tent, it wasn't you. Xiao Shuo's eyes blazed with fury as he leaped back 3 meters, as if avoiding some plague. Xie Yaohuan felt freshly insulted by his reaction. The blood that had rushed to her head turned ice cold. Shame forgotten, she roared. It was me. How dare you deny it? Xiao Shuo, a man should own his actions. How could someone like Xiao Shuo, whom even I can't handle, be forced to submit by Xie Yaohuan? His expression turned cold. Tell me, who is she? I'll only give you one chance. In the main hall, I soaked myself in hot water when my heart suddenly skipped a beat. Do you think Xie Yaohuan can take down Xiao Shuo today? Xiangzhu had no time to pay attention to me. She was nearly crying her eyes out. The wound that had just closed has split open again from soaking in water. Your Majesty, just kill me already. Me, seeing her wailing like this, I did feel a bit like killing her. But it's rare to have such a loyal servant by my side, so I decided to let it go. If Xie Yaohuan manages to confirm this matter, it would undoubtedly hand me the sharpest blade. My mind was wandering when suddenly a report came from outside the door. Your Majesty, the Regent is charging over here. Why say charging over instead of just coming over? I hurriedly got up to put on my clothes, but in my haste, the freshly bandaged wound tore open again, blood spurting out and staining my white undergarments with a splotch of bright red. By the time Xiao Shuo kicked open the door, I hadn't even managed to put on my outer robe. She's not the one I'm looking for. He fumed in frustration. I trembled in fear, unsure whether it was from his door-kicking action or the words he had just uttered. His eyes locked onto me as he suddenly charged toward me with aggressive intent. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. Does this bastard already know? Is Xie Yaohuan really that useless? Logically speaking, even if Xiao Shuo saw through her tricks, she wouldn't expose me at this point. She'd at least wait until she had Xiao Shuo under her control first. Otherwise, even if I were to be killed by Xiao Shuo without his protection, I could still easily take her down before that happens. Xiao Shuo's claws reached for my neck, and I instinctively flinched. I'm done for, about to be crushed to death. This time, my imperial dragon neck is truly beyond saving. I've never backed down in front of him before. This is the first time. And likely the last. I know my face must be etched with terror right now. I can even imagine him seizing the chance to humiliate me before finishing me off. Yet I couldn't stop myself from being afraid. It was as if the beliefs I'd desperately clung to could no longer withstand the prolonged oppression he'd inflicted and were about to crumble. But at that very moment, he suddenly stepped back 2 paces, and I could breathe again, my eyes fixed on him with anger and wariness. His lips trembled several times before he finally spoke after a long pause. Your Majesty's wound has reopened. I glanced at my shoulder. Blood was soaking through the undergarment, slowly blooming into a bewitching flower across my shoulder and chest. So this bastard was looking at that. I secretly let out a relieved breath. What did the Regent mean by those words earlier? Xie Yaohuan is not the woman from that night. I raised an eyebrow defiantly. On what grounds does the regent prince say this? You've defiled this empress. Do you mean to deny your deed? Xiao Shuo's brow twitched violently before regaining his imposing demeanor. She bears no mark left by this prince. What mark? What kind of mark? How come I didn't know about this? A chill ran down my spine. The mere thought of that bastard leaving marks in such circumstances made my dragon scales tremble with rage. Damn it! This bastard really thinks he's some alpha male, marking his territory everywhere. My outburst made him sneer. Your Majesty must be aware. I'll give you one night to consider. If you can't produce that person by tomorrow, I'll have no choice but to search the palace myself. A threat, barefaced and shameless. Xiangzhu, show me where the mark is. I suspected he was bluffing, but couldn't be sure after all. Xiao Shuo's level of depravity defied all common sense. Xiangzhu scanned every inch of my body until she found a faint magnolia blossom pattern on my lower back. The magnolia that was the family crest of the Lanling Xiao clan. That bastard, I wish I could cut him into 1,000 pieces. Cut it off. Xiangzhu looked at the unhealed wound on my shoulder, then at my lower back. Your Majesty, you must take care of your imperial health. The regent would never suspect your Majesty, but I loathe being marked like some mere object. This is an affront to the dignity of my imperial majesty. In the end, Xiangzhu couldn't prevail against me and peeled off that patch of skin. Though no larger than a thumb, the pain pierced straight to the heart. Early the next morning, Xiao Shuo entered the palace. This time, he brought his female general with him, clearly intending to inspect the imperial consorts in my harem. My men kept watch over the Lijing Hall all night, yet not a single person entered or exited. Your Majesty, you truly have remarkable composure. His hand pressed against the small of my back as he leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. Old grudges and fresh humiliations surged through me, pushing me beyond rage. Regent, I seethed. This insult today, I, your emperor, will remember it. He took a step back, utterly unafraid, his face instead blooming with delight, as if he'd finally gotten the chance to crush me beneath his heel. That smile was triumphant, yet also dark and ice-cold. He suddenly straightened up and waved his hand grandly. Search the palace. The dashing female general led her soldiers as they swarmed into my harem, dragging out all the beauties from my 3 palaces and 6 courtyards to verify their identities one by one. Xiao Shuo, however, sat in my Lijing Hall in high spirits, savoring this year's Nula Tribute premium tea, accustomed to holding a knife in his right hand while using his left for other tasks. When he raised the left hand that had just pressed against my lower back to take the teacup, the smile suddenly vanished from his face. The tea was no longer being served, his left hand clenched into a fist, his hawk-like eyes suddenly fixed on me. I glared back at him with equal intensity. Regent, if you fail to find anyone in my palace today, how will you account for it to me? He studied me for a long moment, as if wrestling with some inner torment, before replying hoarsely, Your Majesty, why are you so certain I won't find that person? Because aside from Xie Yaohuan, it couldn't possibly be anyone else. If it's not Xie Yaohuan, then this person simply doesn't exist. Oh, is that so? The palace search didn't take much time. In less than 2 hours, the female soldiers had combed through every corner of my imperial harem. The result obtained was, Your Highness the Regent, the person you're looking for isn't here. Xiao Shuo stood up, stared at me for several breaths, then turned and left in a huff. I wanted to stop him, but as soon as I tried to rise, I nearly toppled off the dragon throne. After repeated injuries and frights, my body finally succumbed to illness, my vision blurred, my head heavy and feet unsteady. Xiangzhu quickly helped me into the rear hall. Upon examining the wounds, not only had the shoulder injury begun bleeding again, but the fresh wound at my lower back was also seeping blood. The blood had even soaked through the imperial robe. Fortunately, no one had looked at my back, otherwise, that telltale stain would have been impossible to conceal. I drifted in and out of feverish sleep all day, and in the dead of night, Yu Mairen came again to bring me a warm bowl of soup. After taking Xiangzhu's medicine, I felt a bit more alert, just enough to manage some food. Yu Mairen sat by my bedside, spoon-feeding me with gentle patience. Xiangzhu, you may retire and rest. I will attend to His Majesty here. Xiangzhu had kept a nervous vigil over me all night without sleep, And today she's been bustling about attending to me all day, her exhaustion now plainly written across her face. Even someone as hard-hearted as myself couldn't help feeling somewhat moved, so I said dismissively, "Go rest. You've grown ugly from exhaustion." Xiangzhu had initially wanted to stay, but upon hearing the word ugly, she immediately pursed her lips in hurt and withdrew with tearful sniffles. The regent sent men to search the palace today. Every concubine was stripped and examined at the waist. Does your majesty know why this was done? I half closed my eyes, weakly saying, "He just wants to humiliate me. Don't interfere." Lady Yu fell silent. She quietly fed me a bowl of soup until I regained some strength, only then realizing she had been unusually quiet tonight. Looking up at her, I saw her breathtakingly beautiful face seemed veiled in a shadow, appearing somewhat gloomy. "But did they bully you?" I asked. She forced a faint smile. "Your servant is not afraid of their bullying. What I fear is the regent bullying your majesty." I laughed, still wanting to maintain some dignity before my concubine. "What nonsense are you saying, my beloved? Even if he is the regent, how could he possibly bully me? I am the son of heaven." "Oh, really? So the regent wants to search for the person who attempted to assassinate him that night. If it was his assassin, how could he have seen their lower back? And why is he so certain it was a woman? Unless..." My eyes flew open wide. Yes, with Xiao Shuo making such a public spectacle of searching the palace, wouldn't it make people suspect that his assassin was one of my imperial consorts? And checking their lower backs, wasn't that practically announcing to the world that he'd seen the woman's body? At this, my hatred grew even deeper. I must kill him. Yu Mairen silently set down the soup bowl and picked up another bowl of nourishing tonic, stirring it with a spoon to disperse the rising steam. She suddenly spoke. "Wasn't it your majesty who attempted to assassinate him that day?" I shuddered violently, my eyes fixed unwaveringly on Yu Mairen. Yu Mairen's expression didn't change in the slightest. She continued stirring the soup, scooped up a spoonful, blew on it gently, and brought it to my lips, her face wearing the familiar smile I knew so well. I didn't drink, my gaze remained locked on her. For the first time, I realized I didn't understand my Yu Mairen at all. I thought it was a chess piece firmly in my grasp, but one day it suddenly leaped out of my control and transformed into the one manipulating the game. I refused to eat. But she didn't force me, still smiling at me with devastating beauty. "While preparing the soup for your majesty, I saw Xiangzhu disposing of the medicinal dregs. Though I'm no expert in pharmacology, I took a curious glance and happened to notice ginseng, white atractalodes, angelica root, white peony root, tangerine peel. I know nothing of medicine, but even I could tell these were excellent ingredients for replenishing qi and nourishing blood. What's wrong with me taking some blood-nourishing medicine when I'm injured?" She smiled, her face slightly cold. "Nothing's wrong, except that these medicines combined can also stabilize a pregnancy." With a loud bang, I knocked over her medicine bowl. But this surge of anger also accelerated the effects of the drug in my body. My limbs went weak, I couldn't even muster the strength to sit up. Even a fool would realize something was wrong by now. "Yu Mairen, what have you done to me?" I had trusted her so completely, yet in the end, "Your Majesty, don't panic. This concubine merely fears you might injure yourself further by moving recklessly." The next second, I beheld her chest, more unconstrained than my own. The beauty I'd nurtured for 3 years turned out to be a man. Yu Mairen pinched my chin, her eyes blazing with ferocity. "I'm done pretending. The emperor-grade little cabbage I've nurtured for 3 years was actually defiled by that bastard Xiao Shuo. I want to kill him, and you took the sword for him. Now, you're resting for pregnancy. What, are you so eager to bear his child?" Horror couldn't even begin to describe what I was feeling at this moment. Yu Mairen gently stroked my injured shoulder, her breath like icy blades. "Your Majesty, you've disappointed me so much. Who are you really?" This was absolutely not the cunning and tactics befitting a simple beauty without family backing. Yu Mairen didn't answer. I only felt my body becoming increasingly unresponsive. I dug at my wounds, trying to use the pain to stimulate my nerves and bring myself back to alertness. But the fury blazing in his eyes was nearly enough to reduce me to ashes. "Your Majesty, the child you should have born was mine, one who would rule the world. Only that could atone for the Li family your Yuan clan destroyed." The Li family, you're a remnant of the fallen dynasty. At this moment, I finally understood, alas. It was all too late, Your Majesty, you are mine. Please remember this forever. The drug's effect took hold, making my head dizzy and heavy. In my dazed state, I seemed to see the door being forced open, and I thought I heard Xiao Shuo's voice. Xiao Shuo kicked away my poppies. I didn't wake until dusk the next day. I saw no poppies, but heard the sound of blade sharpening outside, clutching my robe and leaning against the wall. I stepped out to find Xiao Shuo sitting on the threshold of Lijing Hall, sharpening his dragon-slaying saber. The entire Lijing Hall was like a haunted realm, devoid of a single soul. He glanced at me and continued sharpening his blade. I slumped my weary body onto the dragon throne and stared at him intently. Did you kill Yu Mairen? He escaped. There are secret passages in this palace. He said he didn't want to look at me. I stared at the dragon-slaying saber in his hand. Last time. You took Xie Yaohuan's drug and had your way with me. This time, I've been drugged by Yu Mairen and will have my way with you. We're even. Boom. Xiao Shuo kicked over the nearby tea table. His eyes blazed with towering fury, fixed directly upon me. No doubt the fact that I was a woman and that we'd rolled in the sheets twice had shattered his worldview into irreparable fragments. For a fleeting moment, I actually felt a twinge of pity for him. Judging by the gleaming polish on that dragon-slaying saber in his grip, he must have spent at least several hours sharpening it. TSK. Actually, my dragon neck isn't that sturdy. You wouldn't need such a sharp blade to sever it. So eager to kill your emperor, he didn't answer. Only sharpened the dragon-slaying blade louder. I'm with child. The child is yours. His face, so handsome it could make gods and mortals alike seethe with envy, twisted before me. In life, one must be struck by lightning a few times before it can be called complete. Xiao Shuo not only didn't kill me, but also treated me with the utmost care and comfort. Probably the child in my belly is the only remaining descendant of the Xiao family. If he dares to harm me, the ancestors of the Xiao family in the underworld might rise from their graves to whip him to death for being an unfilial descendant. But after all, he and I are mortal enemies. Yet he has no choice but to take such good care of me, which must be eating him up inside. Just thinking about it fills me with delight. With him covering for me, I now have a legitimate excuse to ignore court affairs and avoid meeting ministers. These months of pregnancy have unexpectedly become the most leisurely and carefree days I've experienced in my 20 years of life. Xiao Shuo had already planned everything for me. He didn't publicize the matter of Yu Mairen, but instead confined her to Yulan Palace under the pretext of offending the imperial dignity. After the child is born, it would be taken from Yulan Palace, and then she would be erased under the pretense of her death from postpartum hemorrhage. I hadn't expected Xiao Shuo to think so far ahead. For the sake of his heir, he had indeed gone to great lengths. He no longer sharpened his knife in front of me. On the contrary, he became increasingly gentle towards me. During those months of morning sickness, he would review memorials at the Lijing Hall during the day, then sneak into the palace at night to hold me as I slept. Sometimes, he would gently touch the scars on my shoulders and waist, asking if they still hurt. I would ask him in return, "Will you kill me after the child is born?" He would look at me with some irritation. "If I say no, would you believe me?" Of course I wouldn't. We've been at odds for so many years, yet always coexisted peacefully. Even the Jade Emperor himself probably wouldn't believe it. Xie Yaohuan found out I was pregnant 3 months later. I don't know what Xiao Shuo did to her the day I jumped into the Tay pool, but she suddenly shaved her head and shut herself in the prayer hall for 3 months. 3 months later, when she emerged, she came to me and said she had figured it out. She wanted to tell Xiao Shuo that the person that day was me. She said it's all my fault that she couldn't have Xiao Shuo, and she wants me to be torn limb from limb by him. And then there was no more. Xiao Shuo personally brought over a bowl of soup and a jar of sour plums, saying in front of Xie Yaohuan, "Drink the soup. If you feel nauseous, eat the sour plums." Xie Yaohuan's eyes nearly fell into my soup bowl. Her fingers trembled as she pointed at me and Xiao Shuo. You shameless pair." Perhaps because her gaze that day was too piercing, Xiao Shuo ordered her confined to Luxian residence, forbidding her from leaving without summons. Lina's birth came quite suddenly. The day before, Xiao Shuo had cleared the imperial garden, asking Xiangzhu to accompany me for a walk outside. Unexpectedly, Xie Yaohuan escaped from Luxian residence and pushed me into the Tay pool. I always said the Tay pool was my nemesis, who knew it would still bring me misfortune even after being drained. When I fell, though the edge was less than 6 feet deep, the impact broke my amniotic sac. Blood gushed out like spring water seeping from the earth. Xiao Shuo was terrified out of his wits, holding me tightly as he ran. He kept reassuring me that everything would be fine, he was here, I would be safe, and so would our child. For a fleeting moment, I actually thought, since he'd kill me after the child was born anyway, I might as well die with his offspring. I couldn't let that worthless father have his way, but this child was a life I'd carried for 9 months. No matter how violent I became, I couldn't bring myself to abandon it. I fought desperately to give birth, only to hemorrhage in the end, just as Xiao Shuo had predicted Meiren's fate. It's all because of your jinx, now I'm hemorrhaging. Are you happy? With my last ounce of strength, I cursed at him, as if by doing so I could remain conscious. I refused to die alone without dragging him through the gates of hell with me. Miraculously, against all odds, I actually managed to pull through. When I opened my eyes again, Xiao Shuo was unshaven and haggard. Looking like a completely different person, he placed the child beside me, then left the palace without saying a word. For nearly half a month, he never once appeared at Lijing Hall again. It took me 3 months to fully recover my vitality, and when he came to the palace, he told me he had filled in the Tay pool, that place would never hurt me again. He also said that Xie Yaohuan had gone mad, and he had confined her to the cold palace. The one who nearly killed me and our child, he didn't even execute her. Perhaps he still cherished their past affection. Xie Yaohuan hanged herself from a beam just days after entering the cold palace. When he stormed into Lijing Hall, I made it very clear to him, I was the one who had sent people to do it. I'm the kind of person who can't stand the slightest grievance. I never let revenge wait overnight. He didn't say a word, just slaughtered the entire Xie family before dawn. I was utterly shocked by this. Though I've long abstained from court affairs, I know everything that happens in the former dynasty all too well. Xie Yaohuan, having fallen out of favor, moved to Luxian residence to live a vegetarian life and chant Buddhist scriptures. The Xie family couldn't sit still and joined forces with several prominent noble families, attempting to force me to abdicate and make Xiao Shuo ascend the throne. This way, they could remove me as an obstacle, allowing Xie Yaohuan and Xiao Shuo to legitimately rekindle their old flame. And now, Xiao Shuo has annihilated the Xie family. Moreover, since that day, he has come to Lijing Palace every night to stay over. He doesn't do anything, just simply holds me and our son while we sleep, as if we were a family of 3. In the morning, when he attends the morning court on my behalf, he even kisses our son and my forehead. To be honest, I was getting goosebumps, but I never once backed down. Suddenly, I couldn't figure out what game Xiao Shuo was.
Let's live together, shall we? You've already made me endure public humiliation like being pierced by 10,000 arrows. How do you expect me to rise from the dead now? Though I should be furious, for some reason, I feel an unexpected lightness, a relief I've never known in over 20 years. What a pity for all those beauties in my palace who'll never get to enjoy me. Xiao Shuo, if I truly stayed, I might just end up killing you one day. Xiao Shuo suddenly looked up at the sky, showing no anger. He said those years in the western frontier were what kept him alive, just so he could return to the capital and kill me. Later, he wanted to let me have my way, but after 6 years of drifting alone, he changed his mind. If we're really going to hell one day, I'd still want to drag you down with me, he suddenly said, gazing at me with tender affection. That look in his eyes made me think he'd had a change of heart and would say some earth-shattering sweet nothings. But you can't get ivory from a dog's mouth. A few days later, the entire court held a funeral for me. The whole nation mourned. He took me on horseback to watch myself being buried. Even from across the mountain, I knew I was being laid to rest with him. The Grand Secretary of the Hanlin Academy even gave this mausoleum an utterly ridiculous name, the Tomb of Two Saints. I flew into a rage. How many people have you planted in the court? He didn't answer, only smiled. Let me take you for a drink. A new Zuetian tower has opened in the east of the city. Their drunken immortal chicken is absolutely unparalleled. The king of a nation has just been buried, and you're running off to a tavern to eat chicken. Aren't you afraid of getting caught and losing your head? He laughed at me. You must be misunderstanding your own glorious achievements. Me, what the hell? When we reached the Drunken Immortal Tavern, I suddenly understood what he meant. Am I the only one feasting on chicken? Today, Drunken Immortal Tower is packed to the rafters. Not just there, the taverns nearby are also teeming with figures, with long queues of people waiting to drink. It's as if today isn't a day of national mourning for the emperor's funeral, but rather some joyous occasion, with the whole country celebrating. After returning from the Drunken Immortal Tower, I was depressed for a month, though I may be a tyrant. I've actually done a few things that benefited the nation and its people. Why does no one remember even a shred of my good deeds? Because of this, I completely abandoned any thought of returning to resurrect myself. One day, without warning, snow began to fall in the mountains. As soon as the weather turns cold, the old wound in my shoulder aches, the pain gnawing like ants devouring bone. I grow increasingly reluctant to move. Xiao Shuo left early in the morning to descend the mountain and still hasn't returned by nightfall. Before leaving, he prepared roasted chicken and duck soup simmering on a small clay stove. I've been eating it all day, growing sick of the taste, and couldn't resist the urge to step outside for a look. The moment I opened the door, I saw him returning through the snowstorm. Were you worried? He asked, his eyes shining. I didn't answer, unwilling to engage with him. He entered the room and told me to keep my distance, saying he was chilled to the bone. I asked him where he'd been. He said today was his son's coronation, and there was some disobedient old man who wanted to act as regent. It's the Duke of Zhenghua, isn't it? When I ascended the throne, he also had ideas of monopolizing state affairs as a regent. I found an excuse to throw his son in prison. Now he's pulling this regency stunt. It's all because you set a bad example, I said. Xiao Shuo wasn't annoyed. He warmed himself by the charcoal fire before touching my hands, and upon finding them slightly cold, he took out a large cloak to wrap around me. Does the wound still hurt? I asked Xiangzhu to prepare a new ointment. As if suddenly remembering something, he burst into laughter. You were the most pain-averse person as a child. How did you grow up daring to block a sword for me? Not just blocking it, but even daring to dig your fingers into the wound. He was both angry and amused. I snapped at him. After being in that soul-crushing place for so long, you can't afford to be sentimental. He pressed his forehead against mine and chuckled softly. Never again. I promise I won't. For some reason, those words made me want to cry. I turned my face away, not wanting him to see my emotions. How is my Ren doing? Xiao Shuo frowned. You're still thinking about him. I snapped. Why would I care about a remnant of the fallen dynasty? Aren't you keeping an eye on him? What if he tries to steal our son's throne? Just then, a knock came at the door. I pushed him aside to answer it. Who's there? Remnants of the fallen dynasty. A crisp and loud response, but so murderously chilling. My hand on the door latch froze abruptly, not daring to move. Xiao Shuo came over and opened the door. My Ren stood in the wind and snow, holding two old hens in her hands. Her gaze bypassed Xiao Shuo, staring at me with an icy, indifferent expression. I looked at him, feeling somewhat awkward, especially since I had just been bad-mouthing him behind his back. Xiao Shuo had told me that my Ren never sent anyone to assassinate me and had even purged all those who attempted to harm me. Being wary of him did make me feel a bit guilty, but I had no choice after all. He was a remnant of the previous dynasty. What if one day he remembered and still wanted to seize the throne? My son is still so young. My Ren got angry the moment she saw me. She put down 2 chickens and said, I heard you're pregnant again. These 2 old hens, stew them with some astragalus and red dates. With that, she turned and left, as if she couldn't bear the sight of me any longer. Xiao Shuo brought the chickens inside, closed the door, and shielded me from the howling wind and snow outside. I asked him, when did I get pregnant again? Yesterday I ran into him outside the canyon, had a fight, and just casually mentioned it to him, who knew he'd take it to heart. Xiao Shuo turned back to look at me with a smile. It was bound to happen sooner or later, wasn't it? Seeing my furrowed brows, he quickly grabbed the 2 chickens and headed to the backyard to slaughter them, eagerly asking whether I'd prefer them steamed or braised. Snowflakes settled on his shoulders. I remember, his shoulders bore scars too, in the same spot as mine. From the sword wound he took for me that year at Wuxiang Cliff. In a few more years, our son will be old enough to take a consort and establish his queen. Have you any young ladies in mind for him? I leaned on the windowsill, resting my chin in my hand as I pondered. The Cao family has 2 promising candidates. We could observe them for a few years. The Kui family also has 2 excellent ones. I'll find a way to reserve them for our son. He looked up at me, his pillously handsome face filled with tender affection. A sudden gust of wind swirled the snow at his feet, blurring my vision. This scene seems somewhat beautiful.